You're listening to Soul Coffee, the podcast dedicated to providing for the exhausted provider who wants to experience more energy, more presence, and be able to get back to experience this juiciness in life. I'm your host, Dr. Jamal Frooster, Tucson chiropractor, life coaching consultant for several hundred chiropractors, chiropractic students, nurses, nurse students, medical doctors, functional medicine doctors, and a lot of different healthcare providers over the last few years, helping them come from a place of being burnt out back to presence and potency. Today's guest, man, he's been my best friend next to Lou the last few years here in Tucson. Without him, I don't know where my mental would have went, honestly, early on, as he really brought a very grounded, principled presence, fun-ass presence, of course, too. And in me developing myself as a chiropractor, he's actually a chiro kid, so he's been getting adjusted since he was born. And it's just the life that he knows, being 31. And he just has helped my confidence in so many ways. He's a certified breathwork instructor as well now, too, which is amazing, as well as when it comes to being all in, like Dr. Ev Pingalore is all in on life. And I knew it the moment we connected at a seminar experience. Story for later on in the show, but his man is here to be able to help add a lot of clarity in how living a natural life is empowering. It provides so much freedom physically, mentally, emotionally. And I think a lot of people just don't know or understand chiropractic. Like some people know, like think that they know chiropractic. They don't know chiropractic. And he embodies that, as he embodies a lot of truth, wisdom. And I'm really, really excited to be able to just have a good-ass conversation with my best friends and for y'all to enjoy it and be able to extract a lot of different nuggets from. So without further ado, I welcome to Soul Coffee for the first time, Dr. Evin Pingalore. What up, baby?
How we doing? Thank
Oh,
you so much.
man, I'm fucking pumped, bro. Let me tell you. Oh, he's also a devoted husband and an amazing and inspired father. I would be miffed if I didn't mention about AV Jace. Shout out to you. Shout out to Tay as well, too. Thank you for letting him be here.
What an introduction, man. Thank you. I mean, I'm like humbled already. I'm like, wow, like I guess I'm all right.
Yeah, you motherfucker. Oh, man. I think where I'd love to just dive into is when I first started chiropractic school, there's this concept of a chiro kid, which if you don't know what that knows, it's someone that predominantly for the majority of their life and from birth, they haven't received any pharmaceutical drugs or any quote unquote mandatory vaccinations. And I'll just preface this with this, as that might turn some people off, which it's all good. But I'm not here to make this about a vaccine conversation. It's more so I was mind blown when I met chiro kids. And when I was in grad school, I was like, you never got any vaccinations? They're like, nah. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? That's insane. And with that as well, too, there's an opportunity to explore how just living naturally, even though Dr. Ev has fractured his back casually, as he likes to go down fast on mountain bikes, dirt bikes, all kinds of bikes. And I'd love for you to just, share your story. And how was it growing up for you? As one thing you shared is like you wouldn't get sick that much compared to other kids.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. Growing up, I would see everyone around me like constantly like getting ill, like falling ill, having symptoms all the time, like sneezing, coughing, taking medications at school, needing to go to the school nurse, this and that. And I never really had that experience. And when I did become sick or come down with symptoms, it would usually be pretty intense. Like I would get really sick for like 4 or 5 days, and then it would just drop off and I'd be good to go for the next like year or so. So I'd get what I would call now upgrades every year or so in my immune system, where I was just challenged and tested with whatever was in the environment, and I'd adapt to it, and my immune system would be stronger for it. And I never made the connection when I was young, when everyone around me was constantly battling different symptoms, I guess you could say, whereas it was foreign to me. I felt very fortunate that never happened, but I didn't make the connection with that was because I wasn't intervening with things from outside of myself. There was a lot of faith in my family that if you became sick, like you just need to rest. Just sit down, and just go lay down for a few days or a day, whatever it is, whatever the body requires, and just let your system adapt to whatever it is and move forward from there. But we didn't have a lot of like medications or anything. Like I don't even think we had ibuprofen in our cabinets.
That's a mind fuck in itself, because I went home and I love my parents, but I grew up in a very pharmaceutical drug household. So I opened the medicine cabinet, Pepto-Bismol, ibuprofen, Aleve. God, take your pick as well too. So to not have that, because me and Lou, we don't really have we have a medicine cabinet, but it has some subs. But I don't even think we don't even have any ibuprofen in our house like now too. It's just wild to think.
Because you can do it. It's not needed. You can reach for those things, and yeah, they may help your symptoms subside for a brief period of time, but most of the time they prolong the illness or the sickness for longer than it needs to go on, because your body's never really given the amount of time it needs to, again, adapt, because you're just like now numbing yourself to it. And yeah, you feel good in the moment, but then instead of being better in a few days, like you're just like prolonging that sickness for weeks, sometimes days, or whatever it is.
Why is it that you think people, default to that, or they don't perhaps, recognize that they're prolonging actually their sickness, or they're not taking care of it?
I think that it's programmed from a very young age. I think it's part of our culture. And whether we realize it or not, everywhere we turn, billboard signs, commercials, all of them point to, hey, take this and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
So as a nation, I would just say a nation, like we lean into those things because we're just shot in the face and in the subconscious for so long with all of these informations on how, you just take this pill and you'll feel better.
Yeah. It's just inundated in people, and they're so. I think a lot of people are just so depleted when they go home and they're just watching the TV programming that they're just downloading it. And it's no shame, like never. It's no shame. And what this episode is, I just wanted to be a reflection and a challenge to a different way of being. Like that's what's really exciting for me, because it's another way of being, which is so potent. As I think with the vid and all that came with that the last few years, we really, really had to take a good look in the mirror. And I think one of my favorite things I've already said on the podcast is that you can do it. So with that being said, I'd love to know, man, I know you fractured your low back. That's a whole story for sure. But I'd just love to know, man, how was the healing journey from when you fractured your low back, a little bit of that lifestyle, where you're at mentally, and what helped you, because you weren't going to be a chiropractor. You're a contractor and you're getting after it there. So where were you at when you fractured your low back? And then walk us through, like, how'd you make that turning point?
Yeah, so that was a big turning point in my life, obviously, as I was obviously grown into being a chiro kid. We didn't have medications, whatever, in the house.
Shout out to Pete.
But yeah, Dr. Pete practices in Massachusetts still to this day. 40 years in practice.
40 years.
A few weeks ago, so that's pretty cool.
That's
my father
cool.
out there.
That's so cool.
But I would say I was really immature for a long time with like what health and what it meant to be healthy was, because again, I kind of took for granted the way I was raised, and I saw everyone around me doing different things, and I was like, well, why can't I just live that way? That seems like the way everyone else does it. Why wouldn't I just do that? So for a while, when I moved out of the house, going into undergrad, I started to dabble a little bit more with prescription medications and things like that. So I was in that phase of my life when I was snowboarding a ton. I would go every single day. I worked at the mountains, so I would snowboard every single day, pretty much every day I could anyway. And it was getting pretty good, so I would just I was constantly pushing my limits and trying to get better and progress with it. And where I was going with that, I don't know. I really didn't think I'd ever be a pro snowboarder. I just loved it, and I just loved the grit it took to land tricks and just keep going after things over and over again. And it's funny because I've done some wild things in a snowboard, and when I did break my back, it wasn't like I was doing anything I wasn't familiar with. I was I was fluent with what was happening, and then just conditions changed, and just like that, landed on my back super hard. And, full transparency, in that moment, I had been snowboarding all day. So I believe we started maybe noon, and we had been snowboarding for 4.5 hours, 5 hours, a couple beers here and there, some joints. We were just having fun, and and at that point in my life, I believe that those things enhance my ability to perform. But what it really does is just numbs you to the fact that you're just a little bit too loose. You're not quite as sharp as you need to be, but you're running off of that just muscle memory that you know what you're doing. And with that lapse in judgment, hurt myself. And when I hurt myself, it was hard. Like I remember bouncing up off my back, landing back on my board. I was going so fast. And I started screaming. I just screamed at the top of my lungs, and I was like under the lift line. So I can only imagine what the people on the lift were like thinking as like I'm swearing my head off, like yelling at the top of my lungs, just holding my back. I couldn't believe what just happened. Like it didn't even dawn on me that I may have fractured a bone. I was like, that hurts really bad, but I'm probably fine. And I'd imagine that's because I was, intoxicated to some extent. So I get to the bottom of the mountain, and the dude I was riding with, my boy Connor out in Vermont, he's like, yo, let's go. And he's like getting back on the lift. And I was like, dude, I think I'm done. He looked at me. He's like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I just like really hurt myself. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't know. But I was like starting to go into shock a little bit. So I just took off. Like I didn't even really talk to him. Took off, got in my car, drove back to my apartment. And I'm laying there. I'm like, fuck. Excuse my French, but I was in a tough space. So I called my dad. I was like, dude, I hurt myself like bad. Like it's killing me. He's like, calm down. You're okay. I'm like about to go to the ER right now. I'm like, I'm going to the hospital. This hurts. He's like, nah, just relax. Like go put some ice on it, lay down. And I didn't sleep at all that night. Got up first thing in the morning out of bed and just went and saw my dad right away. And he was like, he's looking at me and like, he's like, we got to go get x-rays because I can't really tell what's going on. There's so much inflammation. My back had already like swollen up to like a cantaloupe sized bump on my lower back. It was like, it was nasty looking. And so this hematoma had formed already. And we got x-rays. You couldn't see much because of the inflammation again. But my dad assured me that I was okay. He's like, you're fine. He's like, this isn't good, but you'll heal this. Like, no doubt. Like he just had so much certainty. I could see like some fear in his eyes, and I'd imagine he just could see that this was pretty severe. But he had like the utmost faith that I didn't need to go to the hospital. I was okay. I didn't need to do anything. So, I wanted to listen, and my mind got the better of me and I panicked a bit. So I went to a hospital, and this was days later. So the inflammation had subsided a bit. They took other x-rays, and we found out that I had broken both sides of my vertebra, the pars. So it's like you have like this little like circle in your spine where your spinal cord runs through, and the spine or the segment of the spine had just separated off of that circle. And it was millimeters, but it's enough where you have an insane amount of proprioception within that bone. So I could just feel it so much, like every movement, cough, sneeze, whatever. Like I was just like in a tough spot. And I was like, okay. So I just like kept moving. I was like, well, I don't really want to get surgery. They had told me like I would need rods in my spine like right away. Like I was at risk of like damaging myself irreparably if I just kept doing what I was doing. So they put a lot of fear in me in that moment, and I didn't want to hear that either. So, called Pops, told him, and he was just like, oh, whatever, like, you're going to be fine still. Like, let me see the images, showed him the images, all good. And I trusted him, and I really just went on this journey with him for the next, it was maybe 7 months or so, getting adjusted multiple times a week. I was still working full time. So at the time I was like, in and out of doing a lot of manual labor. So I put a back brace on, and it was like such a humbling experience. Like I was the one at work that I could do everything myself, right? I didn't need help from anybody. I didn't need a hand. Like I didn't want help. I'd pick up heavy shit that I shouldn't have all the time. And at this moment I couldn't do that anymore. Like done. Man. I needed help doing everything. Man. So it was so humbling for me to just start asking like, hey Steve, could you help me pick this up? Like I can't even bend over. He'd be like, what's wrong with you? And at this time, I hadn't told anyone at work that like what had happened. And they knew I was hurt, but they didn't know like the severity of it. And I just kept going and going and going, like busting my ass, working every single day until it wasn't getting better. And my dad was like, you need to take a break. Like you need to slow it down.
How many weeks was this, or like what was the time frame?
That was like a month and a half in. Wow. Where, like I was like, I was about Yeah, I wasn't getting any better.
Oh, man.
And I was like just still hammering away. So at that point, I listened to him. I started taking some time off work. At that point, I completely stopped like snowboarding, obviously, and like doing anything physical outside of work. But I was like a little bit scared at this point because I was starting to like get weird symptoms in my feet, like in my legs, and it was just a little scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just started listening to my father more. Slow down, right? Slow down, slow down. So I slowed down for long enough where I started to get quite a bit better. Where I had a hematoma on my back legitimately for 6 months, like cantaloupe status. Like everyone was calling me humpback because like I'd show everybody like, man, this thing was wild looking, and it was funny and not at the same time.
Somebody doing his goddamn best.
Yeah, yeah. But just the faith that my dad as a chiropractor had in me healing that naturally was like,
that's beautiful.
Looking back on it was amazing because I know a lot of people now that would crumble and they would have got surgery right away. Like the pain was a lot of days was like 7 out of 10, like all day, like constant 7 out of 10 pain.
That's maddening.
Yeah. And to put your life at a whole, like I couldn't do anything fun anymore.
Right.
You know, like I was like lucky to get out of my car.
Man, it's like as I hear this journey, it's so many lessons, but it's like, how do you deal with pain, let alone extended pain, that's very intense. Like you said, a lot of people will crumble to default to what's important is you listen to your father, who's at that point probably like 20 25 years ish into the game. And I think what grounds us as chiropractors is our lens, is our philosophy, is the application of these principles, and so that way we can trust and actually have a foundation to stand upon. Versus majority back surgeries, they fail, and then people stay in pain or get into worse pain.
It's like upwards of 80%.
I was gonna say 90. I was like, I think that's a little high, but no, it's 80, 90.
80 something percent of back surgeries are called failed back surgeries.
And how much does back surgery cost? Is it 30, 50 racks?
I think it's more than that. Yeah, it depends on like how many rods, how many screws. Like they charge you for every little thing. So
you're right.
I never even like got the bill for that. I never knew what it would have been.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
The unknown cost of what that would have been. But not even like fuck the surgery. Like the unknown cost of then your limited mobility, your limited expression, your limited freedom, your limited enjoyment and overall quality of life would have succumbed to. Then, are these rods going to work? Or is this surgery going to work? And that I feel like I can appreciate your mindset or your mind vehicle and how you're viewing life. And you're like, you're weighing the risk reward. You're weighing like, what is it that I want to do, and what's going to bring the most life to me.
What was hard is that I wanted it better now.
Ooh.
and we all know that healing doesn't work that way. And somewhere in my mind, I thought maybe surgery would be like, I'm going to be better a lot quicker that way. Very fortunately, I didn't go through with that. And I went through trials and tribulations with that injury, like even further down the road, where I did finally feel a lot better to the point where I thought I could start like using my body again. So there was a day, I want to say it was about 6 months or so after the initial injury, I was like, I'm going to ride a bike. Like, I want to ride a bike. Like, I'm going to go ride a mountain bike. So we went, me and my homies went and rode some mountain bikes. And this is just a testament to what the universe does to you when you don't listen the first time. So I didn't learn the lesson from the initial injury, which was like, slow down and pay attention. And I went back out with my friends. We went mountain biking, and I went out there and I shattered my collarbone that day. So not only now did I have a back injury that was like 80 to 90% healed, but now I had a blasted collarbone that still sticks out of my shoulder like 3 inches. And it was what an insult. That was so hard. That right when I thought, I was like, man, like I can start like kind of moving again, getting my energy flowing, because I've always been such a fiery individual. I've always needed something to do. Whether that was work, whether that was riding mountain bikes, dirt bikes, snowboarding, whatever it was, I always like enjoyed that. I needed that. And if I didn't have that, I felt like nothing. I felt like I put a lot of my identity in that, being an athlete in those areas. Blew up my collarbone that day. And that was like one of the lowest lows I had ever felt, I thought. And I healed that about 6 weeks or so. I was like pretty much good to go. I had full like shoulder mobility where I could use it again. I went to the dirt bike track. So I was like, I'm back, still didn't learn the lesson. This is like third time. I went skydiving that day first. So to kick off the morning, I went skydiving with a sinus infection.
You're
so
sick.
I had a signal. We have these signals in our life that we should be like, oh, maybe that's not for me right now. If I had any vision for the future, I'd have known that there would have been plenty of opportunity at some point for me to go skydiving again. But it was my first time going, and I wasn't going to miss it. So, so I went, and I'll never forget like how much pain I was in coming down off the plane. I could barely enjoy the experience because my head felt like it was going to explode. They tell you right before you go, like if you have any type of like sinus pressure, congestion, like we recommend that you don't do this. And like they make you sign a thing that you don't have any of that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I was hella congested. So we drop, and my eardrums just like, it felt like they just like came out to here and just, and all of a sudden it was like, and I was like shell shock coming down through the sky, and the guy's like pointing. I'm like strapped. I got a guy on my back, I'm tandem jumping, and he's like pointing to all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, cool. I can't really hear him. My ears are just ringing like crazy. And we get to the bottom, I got a nosebleed. I actually had a little bit of blood coming out of my eyes.
Oh my God.
And I just like, I was in so much pain still. And they're like, that was so much fun, Ev. Did you love that? And I went with my now wife's whole family, and they were like, Ev's gonna love this. And like, I was like visually not happy, and they were like, dying. I was just having a hard time. But I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, man, like that sucked, and eventually like 30 minutes went by, and like at least my hearing came back. My head still hurt, but I was feeling better. And I had my dirt bike loaded up in my van. And I was like, let's go to the track, because the track was right down the road. So that was the plan. I was like, I'm going to go skydiving, and I'm going to hit the track for just a practice day. I wasn't racing. I was just going to ride my bike. And we get out there, and mind you, this is about 7.5 months after the initial back injury. So I'm still healing from that for sure. Like I still have a lump on my back. I still have like back pain when I move certain ways. But one thing that was really interesting is when I rode my dirt bike, usually it felt a lot better. And part of that is like the vibration off the bike, and I'm having fun, so I'm focused. And the way you have to stabilize yourself on a bike, you're really braced through your back. So I'm naturally embracing my core and my lower back muscles, which was really helping me with the injury. But like a lot of impact, I'd feel it, and like shock would shoot through my body. Oof. So I did like 2 laps. Second lap, I came around on the track, landed like pretty deep on something, and just nothing crazy. It wasn't like anything out of the ordinary. Just a little bit more impact on the landing. And I'll never forget, my feet hit the pegs, and all of a sudden I was sitting and I couldn't feel my legs. And I was like, and I had like pain like shooting around my waist. But I like couldn't, like I could like move my toes, but I couldn't really like pick up a leg. Like I couldn't pick up a leg. I couldn't stand up. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like what is happening? So I'm like kind of in tears because I'm in pain. And I'm like also like mortified that I may have just like done some serious damage. And I roll up to my van, and Taylor's sitting there reading her book, my wife. Not my wife at the time, my wife now. And she's like, no, thinks nothing of it, but I just roll up and I just dump the bike over and fall off. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I can't move my legs. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like crying now, just like bawling my eyes out because I don't know what's going on. And I'm like really scared that I may have just done something I may regret for the rest of my life. And she helps me load the bike up. I have to sit in the back of the van, and my little 110-pound wife has to load my motocross bike up in my van with me just like hauling it, like pulling it. And we get it in there, we strap it up. I remember I just laid it over and I just strapped it down. And we drove home, and I still don't know why, but I drove.
You're a sick fuck. Let it be known.
So I drove back. Now I went straight to my dad's house at this point. It was like an hour away. I was like, I'm going to my dad's house. I need to figure out what's going on. I go there, and at this point, now I like can't move my legs at all. I can still wiggle my toes, so I'm like, okay, like I'm okay. I never lost bowel function, so I'm like, something's intact. But I don't have the knowledge I have now. So at the time, I still felt like it was like the end of the world. And I was in my truck, and my dad's like, can you get out? And I was like, no. So here my old man, 55 years old, has to pick up my big ass and carry me like a baby up into the house and like lay me on the couch while I just sit there and contemplate my life. Like I was like, I did it again. I was like, the third time. I didn't take any of the signals. I just kept moving at like such a fast pace. I never listened to anything the universe told me. I never listened to anything anyone around me told me, except for my dad telling me that I was going to be okay, which I think I took way too seriously.
Ooh, that was the one thing that you heard.
I just heard, oh, you'll be okay. I just disregarded everything else in terms of rehabilitation.
You disregarded your actions that got you into the state. So there wasn't a pattern change.
No pattern change.
There was no adaptation.
Yeah.
Well, no, there was maladaptation.
There was an adaptation. It just wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I laid there for, well, not in that exact spot. I got carried around, and I could like kind of hobble and like move myself around for the next week or so. Yeah, I don't know. It was about a week, maybe a little bit over a week, that I really couldn't walk well. Like I needed help everywhere I went. I had these like little crutches. Like I was like in a way like crippled for those days, and it was hard, man. And still, the whole time, Dr. Pete is still telling me, you're going to be okay. And his reasoning was that there was just so much scar tissue built up from the injury that when I impacted, it all got like slammed and lodged into the spinal cord, which just compressed the spinal cord. And that's why I lost so much feeling in my legs. He's like, if you had severed your spinal cord, you would have lost everything. You wouldn't have been able to move your feet. You would have lost bowel function and everything. So he's like, there's no way you severed your spinal cord. There was so much compression on your spinal cord that you just lost feeling and you lost ability to use the muscles. Your body went into like a brace to hold you from hurting yourself any
Super
further.
brace.
So that whole journey was like insane. Like I couldn't believe like what just happened. And after the week or so, I was walking again. Like I could, not well, but I was like walking around and I was like, okay, I had a lot more hope and faith in what was going on. And it was in those moments that I was like, I need to go figure out what it means to be a chiropractor. Because this is clearly something that is insanely powerful. Because it brought me back. That guy was adjusting me as I couldn't move my legs. And there was moments in time when he was adjusting me that I would get like muscle contractions and like feel like my legs again. And I was like, this is crazy. And he was doing muscle tests and everything. Like he does a lot of AK stuff. So applied kinesiology things where he's just like testing muscles and seeing how the spinal cord and the brain is connected to the different areas and how well they're communicating. And it was by doing that, he gave me so much hope because he was like, hey, check this out. This is like L2, L3. Like this is still working really well. Like a lot of the L5S1 tests were just like dust. So L5S1, for anyone who may not know, that's the base of your spine, right above your pelvis at the very bottom of your lumbars. And that's where I had fractured. So a lot of those muscle patterns and things were not connected as well as they needed to be.
Oh man, I hope that y'all been enjoying this very potent, powerful story as some things I love to extract. Man, I just love to know. Of course, you had Pops in your ear, Dr. Pete telling you, "Hey, yo, you can do this." But I know it's. I mean, I just dislocated my elbow, like, and I feel like not comparing, but I'm like, I didn't fracture my back. What got you through in those very, very intense bouts of pain?
So mental fortitude is a lot of it, where I just keep telling myself like, it's okay, you're gonna be okay. I just like breathe as much as I could. I just like feel my body as much as I could. And there was a time, because I was a little bit more rebellious towards what my dad would tell me, that I did pop Percocets, that I did lean into prescription medications. Fortunately, I could feel the grip that type of thing gets on you, and I knew enough about it where I had self-control, and I made sure not to allow it to bring me to a really dark place. But that stuff make you feel really good, and I get why people get so addicted, because there was moments in time where like I was like in euphoric bliss if I popped a Percocet, and I, like after being in like 9 out of 10, just like death-defying pain, and I didn't tell anyone I was doing that. It was like very, very secretive about it.
I picture like you created this inner fortress, or this fortress for yourself, where it's like that was the fortress of of your suffering, and you just had to, you were in, excuse me, it's like you were in an arena and you had to like go to war with yourself and just figure it the fuck out to get through work, because your sick self was still working for at least 6 weeks after you had messed it up when you were snowboarding, and then went to work. And sounds like you had some humbling aspects to it to be able to ask for help. How would you say that this tied you to a spiritual understanding of what healing is?
At that point in the journey of all of these injuries, there was just something inside of me that felt there was something much deeper going on that I could ever conceptualize. That like any like science would say, you know, because I was Googling everything. Like I was like, and none of it made sense. Like and obviously Google is like tough. It's a tough path to go down. Now that I know what I know, but it's I really started to lean into the idea of spirituality because I knew that there was something bigger than me that was taking care of me. I knew that I had a guardian angel. And there's been many other times in my life where I look back on and I'm like, I shouldn't have lived through that. There's no way I should have lived through that. And that's really what gave me the faith that there's just something much larger than me at play here. And it's important that we at least acknowledge that.
Because if we don't, or when you didn't, then what?
You're in for a world of hurt. You're in for, because if you think you can do it all yourself, like that's a very egotistic way of going through things, and it's a limited way of belief, because you can only pull so much out of your brain to overcome that amount of pain. But if you can lean into something larger, the energy of your body, the energy of the universe, whatever you want to go down, whatever rabbit hole you want to go down, it starts to become easier. So if you can let go of your ego, of your mind, of what should make sense, what you've been led to believe, then it can be a lot easier for you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I mean, just diving into a natural philosophy, you're leveraging nature. Or you leverage nature, something bigger than you and something that your body already is. And when you're able to do that, then, I mean, you don't got to figure it all out on yourself, and you don't got to figure it all on your own. And I imagine that that's at least, it takes a little bit of the weight off, which is very, very important. Man, when it comes to being able to, because what we were talking pre-chat as well too, but one thing I loved was that it's like you built or rebuilt a responsibility and a respect for your physical being throughout this process. Can you tell me more on that?
Yeah, so at that point, I knew that I needed to be more calculated about everything I did. And I needed to listen more intentfully. I needed to have a better understanding of what I was capable of, what I wasn't capable of. If I wanted to continue to do the things that I loved, then it was going to take a responsibility in knowing my limits. Because before that point, I didn't believe I really had any.
I appreciate the calculated nature, because what you're flirting with, I mean, you're flirting because there's a principle, of course, there's limitations to matter and limitations to potentially just mind. But there's definitely limitations when there's been such a, I think in that case, just a extreme usage of, or I'd maybe dare say depletion of health per se. So you're more susceptible to these things. And then the opportunities that you had gave you an external stimulus for then you to respond to, which then you did, but not in a constructive way. So then it gave you literally a deeper stimulus of like, hey, you get it this time.
It's like you mentioned with your elbow, you know, you had that stimulus that you adapted to, and it was still challenging because you were out of practice for a certain amount of days, and that was really hard for you. And I watched you go through similar mental battles. So regardless of the depth of the injury, if it's something that keeps you from doing what you're used to doing or responsible for doing, then it really makes you reevaluate your priority and helps you just navigate with more intent.
And I think that's at the heart of a lot of lessons when it comes to people dealing with injuries, it really makes you, well, it gives you an opportunity, because you still don't have to, as clearly, but it gives you a really good opportunity to be like, because I mean, when that happened, I needed to clear my schedule, because Brett said once, he's like, you know, could I still work out? Yeah. But he's like, you know, how much energy do you want to put into healing this right now? Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I was like, oh, he like quantified it for me, because I could still keep a run around doing everything, still trying to adjust people as well too. But is that what's most important right now? Mm-hmm. Man, okay. So as you got curious about chiropractic, from then on, was it just full send, or was there any other parts of yourself you had to kind of negotiate, or lifestyle that you had to negotiate before you made that jump?
Yeah, I needed to definitely come face to face with myself at that point and really understand that if I was going to go back to school to be a chiropractor, that I was going to have to change some things. Like, I wasn't going to be a chiropractor that was like beaten and broken and like taking drugs to make it through the day. You know?
Because that's a thing, y'all. That's a thing. No judgment, but
I was doing that. I was doing that. I continued to work, you know, after everything with all the injuries and things. Like, yeah, I got a lot better. I definitely had a higher focus on my well-being and fitness and all that. But I was still like partying, you know, let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. I was still partying, having a lot of fun, like doing different things, like up all night, like whatever it was. And I knew that if I was going to go and become a facilitator of other people's health, I was going to need to take responsibility for my own to the highest degree.
Ooh, the highest degree. I love the specificity of that. I relate in that as well too. As doing athlete, partying was great. Like, and that was a certain lifestyle in my first quarter. That's when I got my shit pushed in, of like, we can't do this anymore, and something needs to change because of the different pain points in my life and that I was experiencing. And I resonate with that deeply, as there needs to be a death of self per se, to step into who you're supposed to be on the other side and jump to that.
Yeah. And I remember the oath that I took, like, for myself. I don't even really think I told anybody, but I just like promise I made to myself was on my drive down to chiropractic school from Massachusetts to Florida. I said, I'll never take another prescription drug ever again as long as I live. It holds true to this day. And yeah, I don't see a need for it. And that's no shame on anyone who takes prescription medications or may have things that they need to take them for in this moment. I just challenge you to question yourself. Well, what's the end goal? You know,
it's a good frame. Good question. What's the end goal? How long you're supposed to be on this?
Yeah.
Is there any alternatives that I imagine the person who prescribed it gave to you? And have you allocated any resources to be able to see if there is any alternatives to this lifestyle?
Yeah, all questions that we ask people in practice, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many people that we've worked with that, you know, in the beginning of care, they have this like laundry list of things they take, and then 6 months later, they're taking none of it. And it's really cool to see them step up and understand that, like, there needs to be an end to this. This can't be forever, because the systemic effect that these synthetic drugs have in our body is far more depthful than most understand. So yeah, it's cool to see that we're able to now, we've done that for ourselves, and now we can help others just see the light and start to see a different way of living.
Oh, I love it. It's just like to the maximum degree, because we're not out here. I'm trying to like watch what I say. We're not out here half cheeking life.
Both cheeks in, baby.
Both cheeks in, baby. But it comes with I just love that point. It comes with a sense of responsibility and respect for the body, as we all, for the most part, got put down at the end of December. And I think that's because, I mean, we were just going for it, like truly just going for it. And when the body just doesn't get what it needs, and we've depleted it for months or years on end, physically or in a mental or emotional pattern, well, then there's limitations to it. It's gonna be like, all right, time to stop this. Man, for you, I'd love to know, what is chiropractic for you? I feel like that's an important question.
Mm-hmm. Chiropractic is a way of life. I think that's as easy as I can put it. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. It's a way of understanding the body as a piece of nature.
And when it comes to, your future practice members or people that are listening, if you were to put the biggest lesson to this whole journey from the injury to now, like now getting ready to go into your third year of practice, which is crazy. Yeah, your third year of practice, in your year 2. What's been some of the biggest lessons you've learned?
There's many. I think one of the bigger lessons is that health is a cumulative journey, and healing is always happening. It's not like an end point.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be something new. We're going to continue to use our systems for different things, and they're going to be challenged to adapt. And healing is adaptation. Adaptation is healing.
What would you say to people that may be like, oh, well, when does it end? Or I'm done with my healing?
I would say that it's important to recognize that you can't just stop yourself from healing, because whether you like it or not, your innate intelligence within your body is going to be healing something, but it doesn't have to be so esoteric.
That you're not. It's literally shedding cancer cells right now that you don't even need to think about. That you don't even know.
Yeah, what is it, like trillions of cells a day? Your body's shedding and revitalizing within your system. It's always going to happen, and I think that right now there's like a lot of talk of healing and nervous system regulation, and I'd say most don't even know like the first step in any of those things, and that's why it's cool that you do this podcast, because there's so much education on how to start understanding and conceptualizing what it means to heal your nervous system, become more regulated. And there's just a need to just take it as part of your existence and not make it so much of like a focus, like screaming it from the mountaintops thing.
People try to like heal as a flex. I don't know how else to word that.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. A lot of people do. I think part of that's a little bit like, look at me. And it's like, you may need there may be another need you're not having met, because if you're needing so much attention about your healing, then
so you gotta clear something else.
There's something else.
That's not the main. That's not the main pattern.
Yeah,
that's not what's most important right now.
That's not. No. It's like, because we have social media now, everyone's got their platform, so everyone's able to like get their message out of like, oh, I'm doing this and doing that and doing that, and not to like shame anyone who's doing that. That's great. I'm glad that we have these ways of communicating and just being vulnerable, and sometimes like put the phone down and just like be with yourself. You don't have to like post it all.
As you embody so well.
Yeah, I'm not big on the social media game.
It's a miracle I got him here, yo. Not a miracle way. It's fucking dope that I got him here. One other question that I got for you is, when it comes to your specific expression of chiropractic care, what would you say makes your expression different after the last 2 years of being in practice? Pop's been a chiropractor for about 40 years. You get after it in life.
I think what makes my style different is really in alignment with what makes us all different, is that I'm not going to tell anyone to do anything I haven't tried for myself. And I'm always going to seek answers within before I try to tell you what to do. I always bring a level of like integrity to my care. Make sure that I'm not just like ambiguously telling you things to do. I'm working with you on things that like I've used in myself and others and have seen work, and I want to see you at least make an attempt at making these changes and like see how that plays out in your life. I enjoy like the intensity I bring to care as well. I think that I have a very direct way of communicating to people that I think at times some people are like, they're like, shit. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's like a good pattern to interrupt in the way I communicate.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of people are used to being floofed or just like pushed to the side, I think, or just not even engaged, not even regarded. Man, as I'm marinating on this, man, is there anything else that really comes to mind at all that you really would just want to impart with people, whether it be another lesson of the journey or just anything in life, on a natural lifestyle? Excuse me.
Don't take life so seriously. That's really what just came to my mind just now. All of us are taking ourselves very seriously a lot of the time, me included, and I have to remind myself like I'm really not that important, know. And at the same time, I'm very important, and that can be said for every single person. We all have we all have needs that allow us to feel respected, wanted, of value. And at the end of the day, it's what's most important is that we're good people and that we communicate with each other with kindness and compassion, and we're able to see through each other's lens, so that we're not always walking around with so much judgment for everyone else, because at the end of the day, that's just a projection of the judgment we have for ourselves.
How does, on this last question, how does the element and understanding of tone or energy play into that last statement?
I think that could be a whole other rabbit hole.
I think so too.
But the tone in which we live our life is largely a download of how we were raised. And it's important that we at least acknowledge that that's happening, so that we can make shifts accordingly, so that we can begin to live in the tone that we see to be most fulfilling for our future and for our offspring and the people that are around us that will be influencing, that we will be influencing.
I think that's the perfect segue into the final soul coffee question, which is, with that being said, how would you describe your flavor of soul coffee to the world?
Flavor of soul coffee. Kind of sweet, kind of tart, kind of bitter, but full of love.
Nice, bro. Oh, my dog, it's been fucking so much fun to have you on the podcast. It's been a long time coming, as man, I have a weekly conversation with this man at the end of the week where we just reflect on our lessons, and I can't hit home how important that is for me and my health, mental health as well, and advancement and progress as a human being. So y'all need to get yourself Ev Ping, y'all need to get yourself an Alex Liu, as I got both of them in the room with me, which is really freaking dope. Man, Dr. Ping, how can people reach out to you or connect moving forward into this year?
I am on Instagram. I'm not that active on there, but you can reach out to me there. I do answer my messages. It's Dr. Evin Ping. Best way to reach me, however, would be my email, drevinpingalore@gmail.com, and it's Evin with an I. So that's DREVINPINGALORE@gmail. And I'm here to answer any question you need. I love talking to people. I love talking about chiropractic. I love talking about all things. So whatever you need, I'm here for it.
I love it. Well, everybody, make sure you reach out to Dr. Ping. Make sure that his socials and things are in the show notes, which I'm hella excited for. As always, if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, please reach out to me and leave a 5-star review if this really resonated, and feel free to share with a friend, as very excited for what's to come this year, y'all. You're doing great. January is almost over, which is nuts. And my question for you is, how do you want to carry what you brought in from January into February? And what do you want to shift about that? And with that being said, may y'all have a great rest of the day. And until next time, peace.